Love that synth. Really does take you higher, I guess. Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favourite Mixmag Cover CDs of all time. I must stress that this is not a complete retrospective by any stretch of every Mixmag Cover CD ever released. To undertake a task like that would be insanity. I'm focusing on quite a specific period of time, that being 1998 through to the year 2005. I'm choosing that time frame because I was 18 in 1998, obviously 25 therefore in 2005, and those were really what I would class as my formative years in dance music. They were the years which I first discovered dance music, first discovered clubbing, and was listening to various kinds of dance music for the first time. So these were what I would call my formative years, in which not only was I having these first time experiences, but they were really shaping my tastes for the future. So very important period of time for me, but also the period of time when I was learning to DJ for the first time as well. So that just gives it added relevance, I guess. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to run through my top 10 CDs during that period of time, 98 to 2005, in the order in which they were released. And I'm also going to pick from those 10 a special 4 which will get extra recognition. They're sort of like my top 4 from my top 10. For those 4, I have prepared 2 or 3 clips to show you as well. So we'll be able to watch those together, enjoy them together, and obviously I'll react a little bit as I'm playing you those clips. And hopefully they'll put across why I love those mix CDs so much, why you should check them out. So, the first Mixmag Cover CD that I want to start with is a bit of a strange one for a couple of reasons. The main one being that it's not actually a house or a trance or a techno mix, unlike all of the others. It's actually more what I would describe as a chill out, come down, post club, kind of back to mind kind of vibe. And the other thing that makes it a little bit weird is that it was mixed by Pappa, who is obviously a very highly regarded, well-respected DJ, but is mainly known for house music, and specifically progressive house. So a couple of reasons that make it a little bit of a strange one to start with. It was called The Journey, released on the 1998 July edition of Mixmag, and I really like this one. Kind of starts with a bit of hip hop, then moves into what I guess we would call trip hop, but it's quite eclectic. From there it moves into sort of kind of like jazz lounge, electro jazz lounge kind of flavour. Some of the tracks on here, I'll just read through the track list. We've got some very well-known artists like Jurassic 5, like Tricky with his track Broken Homes, great track from that period. We've got a classic here, Massive Attack, Mezzanine, huge Massive Attack fan. Does anyone remember the Low Fidelity All Stars from the late 90s with a track called Vision Incision? That was a cool track. Groove Armada are on here, Asian Dub Foundation. We've even got a Sven Väth track, but it's not a pounding, stomping techno track from Sven Väth. It's a track called Blue Spliff, which was a down-tempo, chill out, kind of like electro jazz lounge sound to it. So yeah, great one for when you're coming home back from the club at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, however late you've stayed out. For me these days it'd probably be a little bit earlier than that now. But yeah, if you're not quite ready to go to bed, you want another hour or two, stick this on, you'll really enjoy it, and it will just help you wind down a little bit. So a couple of years ahead, and it takes us to the year 2000, and on the June edition of Mixmag, we have this little beauty right here, Dirty Trancing, mixed by Timo Maas. Described on the front of the CD as 70 minutes of progressive trance and twisted breaks. What I'm going to do with this one is read what's written on the inlay before I talk about my own thoughts and feelings towards the music. That being, there's some excellent descriptions on these inlays from Mixmag journalists at the time. So in here we have, in fact, before I even get to that, I just want to show you this. That was in the cover. Don't ask me why. I don't know if it actually came with this or not. I guess Mixmag thought I'd want a CD of an arse. Timo Maas is one of those rare DJs who defies pigeonholes. He takes everything from progressive trance to twisted breakbeats and fuses them with dirty great bass lines and squelching acid riffs to forge his own unique, funky style. Timo's sound is percussive and subtle, yet it's totally irresistible on the dance floor. Well, I can certainly testify to that. Julian Roth goes on to say, "This is why Timo is tipped to become a very big name in the near future. This CD will give you a flavour of why he is set to have such mass appeal." Little pun there. But no, that's great. And yeah, the dirty great bass lines and squelching acid riffs were Timo Maas's trademarks, and it was kind of that kind of sound is what got me into him all those years ago. I was a huge fan of his actually as a DJ, but also as a producer, and I owned several of his productions on vinyl at the time, and actually some of his tracks were the very first that I learned to mix with back then. If we have a look through the track listing on the back, we can see a couple of standouts, names that you might recognise. James Holden has a track on there. What else? Humate, DJ Rob Little, and there's a few of Timo Maas's own productions in there. So Riding on the Storm, which I was a huge fan of. He's got a couple of mixes of his own track, De Scheibe, and Azido de Bass, Doom's Night, his remix of that. I don't know if you recall that track, but it was huge at the time. I think it charted very well. It got to something like 2 or 3 in the charts, and had huge crossover appeal. You know, not only house DJs or techno DJs were playing that, but even DJs in the UK garage scene were playing that. I love this mix to death. I've absolutely smashed it over the years. I perhaps haven't listened to it so much in recent years. Maybe that's because it's ever so slightly dated, you know, since it first was released. But don't let that take away from how brilliant it is. And if you haven't heard it, you should really give it a shout. I prepared a few clips to show you. So we'll jump into those. The first one is the opening track, Helsinki, Ash Tracks, mixed into Azido de Bass, Doom's Night. So let's check it out. So now we're in the mix, the second track coming in. Very distinctive track this, I'm sure. If you didn't know what I was referring to earlier, you'll recognise this now. Some of those trademark Timo Maas squelches. So yeah, that opening is fantastic. I only gave you a few seconds of the first tracks, Ash Tracks by Helsinki, but it's a really great breakbeat track, very uplifting, and obviously mixing into that very well-known track. It's just a great way to kickstart the mix. The next clip I prepared for you, I've actually jumped ahead quite a bit in the mix to the 57th minute. Obviously there's lots of great bits in the mix between those 2 points, but I can only show you 2 or 3 clips without this video becoming far too long. So I jumped ahead because I wanted to show you a bit of the energy and try and convey a bit of that progressive trance sound as well. So this is a track by Mad Dogs. It's called Better Make Room, and it's the James Holden remix. Hope you enjoy it. A lot of these progressive trance tracks had the synthy breakdowns, but the beat would always be just layered underneath, so you'd still have something to dance to, you know? Great track. You know, as well as that sort of synthy breakdown bit, but with the beat running behind it, a lot of these progressive trance tracks had, you know, quite a driving, pulsating beat and rhythm to them. So the next clip that I prepared for you comes right at the end of the track. It's where the whole mix has been progressing to, and it's one of my favourite tracks of all time. It's Choose Life by Hugh Mate. The reason I love it so much is a number of reasons, actually. Amazing vocals, some fantastically poetic, dramatic vocals. Part of the track that I've actually selected to show you doesn't feature those vocals, unfortunately, but that's because I wanted to show you the breakdown and one of the best build-ups in dance music, up to that point where the beat drops and then it's just driving and pulsating and fantastic. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's check it out. It's quite a melancholic, wistful breakdown this before we get to that build-up. Oh, really love that track. Never heard it in a club. Would love to have heard that track on a great sound system, you know, surrounded by lots of other people enjoying it just as much as me. Great close to the mix, and Dirty Trancing is the first of my top 4 selection. So jumping ahead a couple of months, staying in the year 2000, this takes us up to the June edition of Mixmag. We have Roger Sanchez, Global House Experience. I'm going to jump straight to the inlay. We have a foreword here by the man, Roger Sanchez himself. He says, "This CD is very representative of the darker element in my live sets. It has energy and vocals with tribal overtones and is funky as hell. As all Jedi Knights should know, there's always a dark side to the Force." Roger Sanchez. You know, it's funny when I hear American DJs talk about playing darker house, darker dance music. I think in comparison to what some of us in Europe and the UK would class as dark house, it pales in comparison. I've never really considered this dark house. For me, it's just a fantastic, soulful slice of New York / Chicago house, kind of full of that New York attitude. I really love it, and the track selection is brilliant. Not many overly familiar tracks, a few familiar artists, but you will notice this with pretty much all of the CDs that I'm going to be talking about in this video. There aren't many big, well-known tracks on them, and I think that's because these DJs are obviously trying to put together something that has a specific vibe. And to do that, that means, you know, the tracks are more important than the artists to some degree. I mean, there are some well-known artists on here. We have Groove Armada have a track on here. Bob Sinclair also has a track on here, and Kerry Chandler, I can see. But none of the tracks from those guys are ones that are very well known. You know, yeah, it's very soulful. The vocals on some of the tracks on here are brilliant. I want to give special mention to a track actually called Can I Get Some by the People Movers. The vocal on that cracks me up every time. It's basically this guy just full of confidence talking about how, you know, women, he's not going to need to make the effort in a club. Women are going to come up to him, you know. I guess that makes him sound like a bit of a dick, but the vocals are just funny, and the way he sings it is funny. It's full of attitude, that New York attitude that I just love. And I really love this mix. If I'd have been picking my favourite 5 from the 10, this probably would have been number 5. But obviously I'm only going for my top 4, so it just got edged out. But that doesn't mean it isn't a great mix to listen to, especially if you want to reconnect to that more traditional style of house music, the style that came out of New York and Chicago in, you know, the late 80s, early 90s. Love it to death, highly recommend it, do check it out. So the next cover CD is also in the year 2000. This was on the October edition of Mixmag, and it's not the last from that year. There is another one, and there's a couple from the year 2001. So what's, I think, become clear to me is that the year 2000 and 2001, those 2 years particularly, have significance for me. And again, it probably comes down to what I was saying at the start of this video. They were my formative years. I was in my last year of university around that time. I'd started going to clubs like Fabric and in London and other clubs, and started just clubbing a lot more in general, and was buying Mixmag every month at that time without fail. You know, it's a bit of a religious act in a way, and yeah, a hugely important time for me, very formative. But yes, on that cover of Mixmag we had Mixmag presents Trance Global Airways, mixed by Sander Kleinenberg. 11 future trance classics mixed by Sander Kleinenberg. Again, a lot of the tracks on this would fall into what we called back then progressive trance. So I'll take a moment just to talk about that term in a bit more detail for what it's worth. Progressive trance, I think, really was a term given to some of these tracks because they didn't quite fit into other categories. So they weren't strictly trance because, especially at that time, trance was bigger, more emotive, you know, dominated by these huge synthy, stringy breakdowns which would last for ages, and then these dramatic, grand build-ups to, you know, getting that drop on the beat. A lot of the progressive trance tracks don't really follow that format. Yes, they will have some form of synthy, emotive breakdown, but much more short-lived, and they were more focused on dancing as opposed to waving your arms in the air. And they straddle the line between trance, house, progressive house, and techno. There were several moments on this mix where you would class it really today as techno, and there were other bits where you would just say, oh, that's just a house track. It's another one of those genre and subgenre type discussions that I normally try to avoid, but you just can't help getting sucked into. And the funny thing is everyone has their own definitions and opinions on this. So I will probably, moving forward on this video, stop talking about genre. But as for the mix itself, I'm going to read on the inlay what Mixmag journalist Tom Whitwell has to say. This is expertly written, I have read this before. He says, "Trance has moved on light years since the Wasps in a Jar anthems of '99. This year's Golden Boy is Sander Kleinenberg. With Sasha's support, his beautiful Four Seasons EP first brought him to our attention in May, and now Sander's giving off sparks with this slippery electric eel of a mix. His DJ sets of warm melodies and funky rhythms flow like lava even, and float like a cork popped from a bottle of bubbly Dom Perignon. So take the rough with the smooth and sander it all off." Yeah, this mix flows like hot lava, that's for sure. Beautiful flow to it. The production values on some of these tracks are great, and it's one of those mixes that does immediately conjure up Ibiza in your mind. Not all dance music does that, of course, but this definitely does. Takes you there, takes you to the excitement of that island, and yeah, I love it to death. It's the second of my top 4 selections from this top 10, and consequently I prepared a few clips for you to listen to. So the first comes only 10 minutes or so in. It's the third track on the mix. It's a track called C&M Productions featuring Marcel, True House, with the Lexicon Avenue mix. It's got a real smooth flow to it. It can change your soul. This is true house music. Love that. Yeah, it's quite smooth. It's one of those mixes which certainly takes its time to build. I'm going to jump on to the next clip that I want to show you. This comes sort of smack bang in the middle of the mix, and it's a track called Disco Static by Soul Mechanic. You'll notice the energy levels have just started to increase a little bit with this track as it's progressing, closer towards the peak moment of the track. So yeah, let's get our ears around this one. Almost like that bubbly glass of Dom Perignon that's mentioned on the inlay. So there you have it. Yeah, very sort of, as I've said before, it's of its time, these tracks and this sound. You don't really hear much dance music that sounds like this these days. Certainly the BPMs in most dance music, excluding techno, has fallen. You know, this is quite a frenetic, hedonistic sound, as was much of the music from around about this time, you know, 2000, 2001. And yeah, the energy levels continue to increase throughout the mix. If we move on a couple of tracks to the 9th of 12 in this mix, there's a track here called Roughneck Rhythm by Pariah. And yeah, I really wanted to show you this one in particular because it's one of my favorite in the mix. And it's full of these great techie sounds. It's a little bit faster, it's got a bit of an edge to it. But again, there's some emotion there. There's some wonderful synth and strings elements to it. So yeah, let's stick this on. So you'll notice the BPMs are quite a bit higher than the last track. Making the point, but even though we've got this breakdown right now, there's still the percussion, there's sort of elements of the beat running through it. So, you know, we've still got something to dance to, basically. Yeah, lots of energy there, really uplifting, exciting, kind of hedonistic little track that. And yeah, the mix continues in that vein. It closes with a track called, and I'm sure you'll recognize this if you know your dance music, Das Glockenspiel by Schiller with the Humate mix, which was a huge track at the time. And yeah, that's all that's left to say about this one. Trans Global Airways, Sander Kleinenberg, fantastic. So the last cover CD from the year 2000 on the December edition of Mixmag, we have La Musique Tremenda, Tunes We Loved in 2000, Mixmag presents. Unlike the other mixes, the other CDs that I've been talking about, this isn't really a mix CD. It's more of a compilation of tunes that Mixmag put together to show you what tunes they'd been enjoying in the year 2000, I guess. This is kind of confirmed by the inlay written by Tom Whitwell at Mixmag. He says, these are some of the tunes that Mixmag have loved in a year full of massive records. Some of them were big hits, some of them still haven't broken into the mainstream, but they're all records with a special something that made us smile over the last year. And they made me smile too, these tracks. I think the biggest reason I've selected this is because of nostalgia. You know, I was obviously clubbing at the time and recognised a lot of these tracks, and there are quite a few big tracks on this, as well as the odd smaller one. But to give you a sense from the track list, we've got tracks like Porcelain by Moby, we've got a remix of Baby D's Let Me Be Your Fantasy, we've got a Shanks and Bigfoot track, we've got a Leo and Bushwhacker track, even really big tracks like The Rude, Sandstorm, Fibonacci Sequence, BT, And there's a remix on here of The Man with the Red Face, Laurent Garnier. So yeah, some big tracks, and they do sort of rub shoulders with lesser known tracks as described. And yeah, it's nostalgia really. There's nothing wrong with a bit of nostalgia from time to time, I don't think. Takes me back to being 20, 21 and discovering dance music and having great nights out. And yeah, good CD. If you want a bit of a time capsule of that period, check it out. The next cover CD, we only have to move forward by a month. January 2001, we have Mixmag presents 2001 A House Odyssey, Yousef's Winter Warmup. It's obviously mixed by Yousef. One of my favourite DJs, always become one of my favourite DJs over the years. Obviously he's been around for a while, 20 plus years, and I've always been vaguely aware of him. As the years have gone by, I've listened to more and more of his stuff, and I would describe this CD as very similar to the Roger Sanchez Global House Experience CD. Very much influenced by some of that original New York, Chicago house sound. Maybe this has a bit of a UK slant on it, with Yousef obviously being from Liverpool. I'll read you what's written on the inlay. This is Julian Rolfe at Mixmag. So this first part is in quotes. "We've absolutely got to go to Cream tonight," gushed the stunning Scouser, sunning herself outside Mambo. "Yousef's playing, and in Liverpool he's God." She's not wrong. Yousef has introduced Cream to a more sophisticated style, skillfully mixing us US house, Latin flavours and tough dubby tracks, but never forgetting that the people have come here for one thing, to party. And that night he wins over the whole Ibiza crowd too. From bedroom DJ to Ibiza icon in just 4 years, this CD is a taste of why Yousef is more popular in Liverpool than Michael Owen, if not quite as good looking. That's a little bit unfair to Yousef, I think. He's not a bad looking chap at all. And come to think of it, I don't really remember Michael Owen being that good looking anyway, so maybe what I'll do here is put up a picture side by side on the screen and you can decide for yourself which one's better looking. But concerning the music, yeah, it's a great CD, and it's another mix that I will sometimes put on if I want to connect to a more traditional style of house. But yeah, there is a UK element, I guess. Some of the more dubbier tracks, perhaps. It may be a little bit darker at times. Reading from the track list, again, only one or two names that might stand out to most people. Silicon Soul had a track on here. DJ Dan has a track on here, as does DJ Pierre. But the rest are only really tracks that I'm aware of because of this CD. It's full of soul, full of flavour. You know, it's what I think most people would think of if you ask them to describe what house is, what house music sounds like. This is the one. Great CD, love it to death, check it out. So this next cover CD that I want to talk about came a few months later on the April 2001 edition of Mixmag, and it's an absolute beauty. It's the third of my top 4 selection from my top 10, and it is Mixmag presents Planet Progressive, Future Funk Phenomena mixed by Cass. This is an amazing mix. It's, I would say, out of all of the mix CDs that I've been talking about, this one particularly demands to be listened to on a great sound system or a great set of headphones. Some of the production values on these tracks are just second to none. And yeah, that's the reason why one of the reasons why I love this mix so much. It's simply put, it's the track selection. Some amazing tracks, as is the case, you know, with a lot of these CDs, not tracks that are very well known necessarily. There are a couple of recognisable names on here. We have a remix of a track by Sander Kleinenberg. We have a remix of a track by Danny Howells. There's also an original Jimmy Van M track on here. As for the rest, no, not that well known. If we have a look on the inlay, there's a blurb, Mixmag blurb. Mixmag say, well, they start by asking this question. They say, what exactly is progressive? Is it a form of trance, or is it an offshoot of house? Or is it a deep tribal sound? Look up progressive in the dictionary and you'll find that it means moving forward, modern and without strict discipline. And that's what this mix is all about. Cass, half of much vaunted production duo Cass and Slide, has put together a forward-thinking collection that swaggers between genres with ease and reflects the scope of music you'll hear him play in his DJ sets all over the world, from Twickenham to Twillo. Welcome to Planet Progressive. So obviously this is what we call back then progressive house. I'm not sure if you would call it progressive house by today's classifications. That's obviously just how genres change and shift. But it was, along with the Global Underground CD mixes around this time, it was one of my first forays into the progressive house sound. A sound that became hugely influential for me, one that still very much influences what I listen to today. And yeah, it's just a wonderful mix. It's got some brilliant sort of emotive, dreamy soundscapes in there. Some points of drama where we have sudden shifts between one tone and another. Other times there's some impeccable mixing and blending between tracks as well. Obviously, with it being one of my top 4, I prepared a few clips for us to enjoy together. So I'm going to start with the second track on the mix. I've got a little segment from this for you. It's a track called Nefes by Eunice, and yes, it highlights what I was talking about in terms of the production values in some of these tracks. So if you haven't been using great headphones up to this point, or listening through good speakers, I implore you, please do for this, because you'll really get the benefit. So let's check out this first clip. That just sounds so good. Yes, I love that track, and yeah, quite slow and dreamy to begin with on this mix. Gives you a nice sort of ambient preamble into what later becomes quite sort of full-on prog house. So I'm going to jump to the second clip. This comes, I think it is, it's the very next track, track 3. It's a track called The Hacienda Must Be Rebuilt by Sound 5 with the Soul Mechanic re-edit. So this track obviously would have been some sort of tribute to Hacienda and Hacienda sound and vibe, perhaps at that time with a bit of a modern take on it. And yeah, another great track. Well, they're all great tracks, but yeah, I particularly want to show you this one just for the overall vibe and the way it creates a bit of excitement, I guess. So yeah, let's jump in. It's just a signal. Don't take it higher. It's just a signal. Ride till you can't ride no more. Love that bit of acid. Oh, what a night. Love that synth. Really does take you higher, I guess. Brings a smile to my face, that track. Most definitely does. And yeah, you know, obviously moving on a little bit, energy levels slowly creeping up in the mix. The next and final clip from this wonderful, wonderful mix is track number 5, a track called Loose Caboose, the Electro Liners. So obviously that leaves quite a few more tracks yet to explore. Unfortunately, we don't have time on this video to do it, but there are some brilliant moments following this final clip that I'm going to show you. The reason I picked this clip is I think it helps demonstrate how this mix moves around a little bit in terms of genre, and this particular track is what I guess you would class as a progressive breaks track, maybe. Really love it. Anyway, can't wait to show you. Let's get stuck in. Great track, that, absolutely great. You know, I think this whole dancing while being sat down is the future, you know, as you're getting older, or if maybe if you're just feeling a bit lazy. But yeah, anyway, wonderful progressive house mix. I don't think there's anything really left to say about that one. It's the third of my top 4. Really, you won't be disappointed if you check it out, I promise you. And I would actually say out of the 10 that I'm talking about, the 10 cover CDs that I'm talking about in this video, this and another one yet to come would probably be my top 2 if I was going to break it down even further. Nevertheless, brilliant CD, check it out. Also in 2001, but a couple of months later, on the July cover of Mixmag, we have Mixmag and Eden present Secrets at Ibiza, sun-drenched anthems from the Mixmag room at Eden. So this mix came, this mix CD came at a time for me when I just finished university, so just finished my 3rd year. I would have been 21. I came back to my hometown of Nottingham and was working with a group of people who were also really big into clubbing like me. And we spent that summer just pretty much going out clubbing every weekend, and we had started to broaden our horizons a little bit. We had started to embrace a sort of more funkier house, a more sort of classy, sophisticated type of house, as opposed to the big trancey anthem type music that we'd been listening to up to that point. And I can remember we would make much more of an effort with how we looked. You know, we would deck ourselves out in designer clothes and, you know, really get dressed up before going out to these more swankier places. And the kind of music that we were listening to is the kind of music that was on here. Definitely more, you know, sexy, sophisticated music, house music with a bit more musicality to it, you might say. Certainly more understated than the big, you know, powerful, epic trance tracks or things like that, which were also popular at the time. Reading the inlay on here, Mixmag have obviously given us a bit of an explanation of the CD. They say, this summer anyone can be a VIP in Ibiza. Just get down to Eden in San Antonio, where Mixmag will be transforming the back room into the Mixmag Rogues Gallery for the whole 2001 season. The best images from our Ibiza magazines from the past 2 seasons will adorn the walls, and residents Bob, Stan and Andy will be mixing up a champagne cocktail of sexy house, club classics and funky break beat. We will also be daring the world's premier DJs to put together impromptu sets from a diverse crate of records donated by HMV. This CD is a perfect warm-up to a night in the Rogues Gallery. See you down the front. So that sounds pretty cool. I wasn't aware they did that. I wonder how that went down. If any of you watching this video went to that night at Eden, let us know in the comments. How did you find it? Hopefully you enjoyed yourselves. But yeah, definitely sexy house. And that opening line about anyone can be a VIP, that kind of ties into what I was saying. So on the 2001 September cover of Mixmag, we have the 4th of my top 4 from my top 10. Mixmag presents Viva Ibiza Nightlife, peak time progressive anthems mixed by Pete Gooding of Renaissance. Yeah, there's quite a bit to unpick there. Peak time progressive anthems is how they're describing it. Now, yes, peak time, absolutely. Progressive, yes. Anthems? No, I don't think I would describe these as anthems necessarily. Like with all the other CDs, they're largely unknown tracks, but they're brilliant tracks. Pete Gooding of Renaissance, so maybe I forgot about Pete Gooding's association with Renaissance back in the year 2001. Maybe he was one of their residents or a warm-up, I'm not so sure. I know his sound now has changed quite a bit. He's now more known for his chill-out mixes that he puts together, which are very good. But my God, this mix, it's phenomenal. It really gets me excited when I'm listening to this. It still sort of puts shivers down my spine, makes the hair stand on end. I'm going to read the inlay because the inlay, as with all of these, it is a fantastically well-written Mixmag blurb. They tell a little story here. They say, it's a perfect Wednesday night in Ibiza. Wandering between bars in Ibiza town, we're handed fistfuls of club flyers. The fire jugglers are out now too, lighting up the sunburned faces of clubbers and the wrinkled smiles of bar owners who busy themselves pouring another few rounds of Red Bull and vodka. I can't drink that stuff anymore. Hours later, it's daytime now. I'm surrounded by people I'm not sure I know, sipping a drink that's a colour I'm not sure I can name. I've no idea what happened last night, but I'm guessing it was good because I can't stop smiling. This is the power of Ibiza nightlife. Transport yourself back to Ibiza with these 12 carefully selected progressive tracks and let a little Ibiza nighttime into your life. Yeah, this is about the nighttime, you know, it's about the fire breathers and it's about, you know, those warm cobbled streets of Ibiza, being either by yourself with a group of people, it doesn't really matter, and just being on an adventure, you know, not knowing who you're going to meet, where you're going to go, but you know your night's going to be good. And I'd say the buzzword for me for this mix CD is exciting or excitement. Looking at the track list, we have a couple of artists that stand out to me. Way Out West have a track on here called Intensify, which probably is the most well-known track on here. There's also a Spirit Chaser remix of a track. I'm a big fan of Spirit Chaser, playing a lot of his stuff at the moment. I didn't actually realise that he started off producing progressive house. He's definitely more now in the sort of deep house space. But yeah, man, I love this mix. It's relentless, it's full on, it's unashamedly peak time. And by that I mean You know, it starts meaty, starts with a decent, you know, high level of BPMs and just builds on that. So obviously I prepared a few clips, and the first clip I want to show you comes around the 17-minute mark in the mix. It's a track called Moral Dilemma by Gainer. Let's check it out, people. So the next clip I want to play you comes around about the 25th minute mark. It's track 4, a track called In His Ear by Tommy White. And it's just another pulsating, tribalistic prog house track with some great sort of techie bits and some great synth bits in it, and you know, builds on the excitement in the mix, I guess. Let's check it out. Love those twinkly chime sounds. Yeah, great track. It's got a really nice sort of throb to it, hasn't it? If you know what I mean by that. Love it, really love it. And I'm going to move straight on to the third and final clip from this phenomenal mix. This is towards the end. This, for me, is the best moment on the mix, and it's one of my favourite prog house tracks of all time. It's a track called Noise Shaping by Jill, or Gil, never know how to pronounce that precisely. Why do I love this track so much? Well, it epitomizes everything that I've been saying about what I love about this mix. Obviously, I've been listening to these CDs quite a bit in preparation for this video. Obviously, I've listened to them quite a bit over the years, but specifically in the last few weeks, had to re-listen to them quite a few times. And whenever I play this little clip that I'm about to play with you now, not only does it send shivers down my spine and make the hair stand on end and all those other cliches. It actually makes me feel quite emotional as well. Believe it or not, the last time I was listening to it, it actually brought a tear to my eye. I have that much of a connection to this track. I realise now I'm probably building this up a little bit too much. You're probably expecting something out of this world, which means you're only going to be disappointed, so apologies for that. But this track, it reminds me of all of the wonderful nights out that I've had over the years. It reminds me why I love dance music so much and how special it really can be. So without further ado, after such a huge build-up, let's check this track out. So no tear this time, but still very moved by that track. Love it, love it, love it. It takes me back. It helps me reminisce about, like I mentioned, some of the best, most amazing nights out I've had over the years. And there's been many, when I think about that fact, despite whatever else is going on in my life, and despite, at times life can be difficult for all of us, especially during these crazy times, to use a cliche, but they are crazy times. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the fact that I've had to have so many of these spectacular experiences in the world of dance music, and I hope I get to have many more. But yes, Viva Nightlife, Viva Beat the Nightlife, mixed by Pete Gooding. If you only listen to 2 of these mix CDs from the 10 that I've shown you, please listen to this one and also Planet Progressive by Cass. So yeah, highly recommend them both, phenomenal mixes. And to wrap up, we're finishing with the last cover CD that I wanted to talk about, the 10th, and we jump forward a few years, right up to 2005 with this one. This one was released on the August cover of Mixmag, and that is the Weekend Warmup 2005, Tom Middleton. I'm a huge Tom Middleton fan. Perhaps not so much of his DJing, which I do still enjoy, but more so of his music, his productions. He's not been very active of late. I think he's off doing various other things and got various other projects on the go. But his productions over the last 10 years have just been a joy for me. He sort of defines his sound as kind of like a liquid cosmic funk. And it's a very distinctive sound, and it's permeated through this mix. He does have a few of his own productions on here, I believe, but he certainly has one of them on here, a track called Global Communication, which he remixes. The track's called The Groove, or The Groove. There's another remix on here again. He calls it the Tom Middleton Cosmos Balearic Mix. So yeah, he uses these kind of words a lot to try and define his particular sound. And it's a sound I just love. It's very fluid, it's very As I say, it's very distinctive. It's idiosyncratically Tom Middleton. And I'll see if there's anything written on the inside. There is. So there's quite a long blurb here by Tom. He goes on to say, "Do you remember my first Mixmag cover mount from June 99? So obviously he's had other mix CDs released on Mixmag. "Well, here's the next chapter. In a deliberate move away from the traditions of CD, vinyl and mixer, I chose to blend tracks entirely digitally in Ableton Live and Logic Pro." So obviously that was quite a new thing back in 2005. He goes on to say, "I match tempos and keys for the synergy between tracks and for those extra sweet harmonic segues that will be reminiscent of the sound of the cosmos." So that was, I think, the name of this previous Mixmag CD. "I selected tracks on the merits of production, energy, ambience and groove. You get some current and forthcoming gems from a mixture of US and European labels and a few exclusives to introduce some fresh dance talent. The flow is smooth but punctuated by drama. Imagine the soundtrack to a night out that starts with a chilled out sunset, then on to a selection of cool bars for Latino flavor, before finally hitting the hottest club for 3 rooms of rocking, jacking, electronic house. I hope you enjoy my selection. Any magic moments while listening? If you would like more info," and then he gives an email address here now. Signs off by saying, "May the fun be with you." And it is a lot of fun. I really do enjoy it. And I hope Tom does more stuff. As I say, he's been a bit quiet as of late, these last few years, and I hope he releases more music in the future. I'll certainly be at the ready if he does and if that day comes. But yes, number 10 of the 10. Really enjoyed making this video, guys. I've got plenty more coming, and if any of you want to see me review any other kinds of music or any other mix series, put your suggestions in the comments. I'll certainly read them and consider anything. Just to give you a quick update on what is actually coming, I'm going to be doing some stuff around Underworld, who are a personal favourite of mine. I love their Everything tour, which was a tour they did in '99. So I want to make a video where I talk a little bit about that. I also want to make a video where I talk about their recent Drift series. And I've mentioned in previous videos about some of the other stuff coming. I'm doing my top 10 DJs, my top 10 producers, my top 5 global underground mix CDs, various other videos. So look out for those. Look out for my weekly mixes as well. I do an hour-long mix myself, which I upload. And if you like any of these, if you enjoyed it, if you feel I've earned your subscription to the channel, I'd be really appreciative of that. It would be a big help. Still in the very early days of this channel, so I'm trying to get it growing. So a like, comment, a subscription, I'd be eternally grateful. So until next time, peace.